Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going way beyond the daily price charts. We're going to break down the massive and mostly invisible forces that are creating a huge structural shift in Bitcoin's supply, and of course, what that means for all of us. All right, so let's get right into it. Well, everyone's been obsessing over the day-to-day price swings, the stuff that makes all the headlines. Something way bigger, way more important, has been building up right under our noses. And we're talking about some seriously heavy hitters getting involved. So what's this number? 214,400. That, as of April 2024, is how many Bitcoin one single company, MicroStrategy, has on its balance sheet. It's a huge number, for sure. But the number itself isn't even the craziest part. It's what that number means. Think about that for a second. That's over 1% of every single Bitcoin that will ever exist. Just gone, locked away by one company. This isn't like them just buying a stock. This is a chunk of a finite asset being taken off the table, maybe forever. It's a permanent squeeze on what's left for the rest of us. And here's where it gets really wild. Look at the speed of this. Every day, miners produce about 450 new Bitcoin. And that's after the halving just cut the new supply in half. But MicroStrategy, they've been buying on average more than that every single day. Just let that sink in. One company is literally inhaling more than the entire new daily production. That is the absolute definition of a supply squeeze. And it's not like they're being quiet about it. The CEO, Michael Saylor, is out there saying things like, sell the gold, buy Bitcoin. I mean, can you imagine hearing that a few years ago? It would have sounded insane. But this isn't just about buying a bunch of Bitcoin. It's about changing the entire rulebook for what counts as a global reserve asset. And check out how they're buying. The old advice was buy the dip, right? Well, forget that. They're buying into strength at all-time highs without flinching. What does that tell you? It tells you they believe today's expensive price is going to look like an absolute bargain sooner than we think. Okay, so this isn't just a MicroStrategy story. That's just one piece of the puzzle. The big game changer? Those new Bitcoin ETFs. You see, they weren't the main event. They were the doorway. They essentially created a super simple API for Bitcoin. API is just a fancy way of saying a plug-and-play connection for Wall Street. Now, massive pools of money, we're talking pension funds, the big dogs, can get exposure with a click of a button. No fussing with private keys, none of that. And the pace of this shift? It's just breathtaking. I mean, look at this timeline. 12 months ago, the big banks were basically calling Bitcoin a scam. 6 months ago, they started dipping their toes in. And today, it's everywhere. What took years to debate has happened in just a few months. That's not evolution, that's a revolution. This chart says it all, really. 8 out of the top 10 US banks are now in the game. And let's be clear, banks don't do things because they suddenly believe in a new philosophy. They do it because that's where the money is. Their biggest, most important clients are demanding it. And just listen to the CEO of BlackRock, the biggest asset manager on the planet. He's not talking about getting rich quick. He's talking about being frightened. Frightened about your money losing value because of government debt and inflation. This is a seismic shift in thinking. It's moved from being a risky bet to a necessary insurance policy. It's about survival. So we've got corporations buying, we've got Wall Street buying, but what if I told you there's a third, even more powerful player at the table? We're talking about entire countries. And while you might think of El Salvador making all the noise, some nations have been playing this game in total stealth mode. The answer? Bhutan. Yeah, the tiny kingdom in the Himalayas. For years, they've been using the power from their huge hydroelectric dams, energy that would have just gone to waste, to quietly mine Bitcoin. No press conferences, no announcements, just accumulating. And what's the result of all that quiet work? Well, their stash is now worth over $1 billion. To put that in perspective, that's 40% of their entire country's economic output for a year. They didn't just buy an asset, they basically built a digital Fort Knox for their whole nation. So you have these two totally different playbooks, right? El Salvador went loud, they made it a marketing campaign. Bhutan went silent. They used a natural advantage, their excess energy, to build a position without anyone even knowing. One wanted the world to see them, the other wanted to grab the asset before the world noticed. And this is starting to snowball. It's not just tiny nations anymore. Look at Pakistan. They just announced a plan to use a massive amount of stranded energy for mining. We're talking enough to power 10% of the entire Bitcoin network. Now, you have to think about what that means. It's basic game theory. If you're India, right next door, can you really afford to sit back and let your rival build up that kind of strategic reserve? No way. The dominoes are starting to fall. Okay, so we've established who is buying. corporations, banks, nations. The big question is why? What's the great fear that's driving all of them to the same asset? To get that, we need to talk about the one force that's changing everything: AI. And to understand its impact, we need to understand this idea of a business moat. The best way to think about AI isn't as some new app or software. Think of it like electricity. When electricity came along, it wasn't just a new thing. It changed everything. It became the foundation for the next 100 years of innovation. AI is doing the same thing, but on a digital level, and it's going to tear down a lot of old walls. So remember that business moat, that special advantage a company has? Well, AI is like a giant cannon that just blows those moats to bits. Any advantage based on information or process or efficiency can be copied and improved by an AI overnight. That's why the lifespan of big companies is shrinking. Their castles are being overrun, and all that money, all that capital has to find a new castle to hide in, one with a moat that AI can't cross. And that's the final piece of the puzzle. In a world where AI can disrupt almost anything, what's the one thing it can't touch? It can't create more than 21 million Bitcoin. It can't hack the decentralized network. It can't change the rules. Bitcoin's moat isn't built on business secrets. It's built on math and physics. It's the only digital fortress that AI can't tear down. So let's just recap who's at the buying table. You've got the corporations like MicroStrategy, who see it as a better place to park their cash than a decaying dollar. You've got the institutions, Wall Street, who need it as a hedge against the very disruption we're talking about. And you've got nation-states, who see it as a tool for financial independence. Three totally different groups, all arriving at the exact same conclusion. Which brings us to the single most important question in all of this. A question for you, for me, for anyone in this space. If all of these giants, these corporate sharks, these Wall Street whales, these countries, are all buying, who's selling? Where are they getting the coins? The simple and maybe uncomfortable answer is they're buying it from us, from the retail holders, the early adopters, the little guys. Every day, the pool of coins held by individuals gets a little bit smaller as it gets transferred to these permanent sinks of capital. They're buying until we're all gone. This is why this time feels so different. This isn't just another 4-year crypto cycle with a big run-up and a big crash. This is something else entirely. It's a structural shift. It's a repricing driven by a supply crisis that can't be reversed. This doesn't end with a big party and a hangover. It ends when the music stops because there's literally nothing left to buy. And as Saylor says, when it comes to this specific role, a truly decentralized, scarce digital store value, there is no second best. There's no plan B. So when the most powerful entities in the world all realize they need a piece of the one asset that can't be created, can't be copied, and can't be inflated, the game just fundamentally changes. And it leaves us with one final massive question. What happens on the day the for sale sign comes down for good?